Why would a struggling single mother risk everything to open her door to a complete stranger? A man who looked like he was running from the law. And what silent, profound truth did he carry in his eyes that convinced her to choose compassion over fear, setting the stage for a phone call that would alter her life forever? The rain came down that night with a vengeance. It wasn't a gentle shower. It was a biblical deluge, a thick, relentless curtain of water and wind that rattled the glass in the window frames and made the old house shudder. It was the kind of cold, unforgiving night that made you grateful for walls, for warmth, for the smallest, most secure corner of safety. But for Clare Robinson, safety was always an illusion, a luxury she couldn't afford to take for granted. She stood by the window of her small, dimly lit living room, watching the outside world dissolve into streaks of water and blurry, neon reflections. Thunder rolled across the sky not like a rumble, but like a violent punch, each clap echoing the frantic beating of her own heart. Her son, little David, all 6 years of him, slept curled up on the threadbare couch nearby, his tiny hand firmly clutching his favorite worn-out stuffed astronaut. The single, bare lamp in the room flickered, a frustrating reminder that the unpaid electricity bill, the one marked final notice, sat like a ticking time bomb on the kitchen counter. Clare was a single mother forged in the fire of necessity. Her ex-husband had walked out 3 years ago, leaving her with nothing but crushing credit card debt, a crumbling home, and a broken promise. But that pain had been transmuted into a fierce, protective love for her son. She worked 2 jobs, cleaning high-end houses during the day, waitressing at the late-night diner dash until midnight. Every single dollar was stretched thinner than the old cotton sheet on her bed. Every meal was a careful, calculated ration. She was bone-tired, perpetually running on 3 hours of sleep and stale coffee. Yet she never let her exhaustion show. To little David, Mommy was an invincible superhero, capable of slaying dragons and fixing broken toys, and Clare was determined to never let him down. Just as the storm reached its peak, a sound pierced the noise, a knock on the door. Not a polite rap, but a desperate, uneven, near-frantic pounding. Clare froze instantly, every muscle tensing. Who could be out there? At this hour, in this remote, forgotten corner of the city? Every instinct she possessed, every survival mechanism she'd developed as a mother, screamed at her to ignore it, to hide, to protect her sleeping boy. She hesitated for a long, agonizing minute, the silence inside her house amplifying the panic. But something deeper, an innate, stubborn kindness that refused to die even under the weight of her struggle, pulled her toward the door. She moved silently, slowly, peering through the worn peephole. Standing there was a man. He was tall, drenched head to toe, his clothes plastered to his frame. His hair was slicked back, his face pale, streaked with rain and exhaustion. He looked entirely defeated, like a marathon runner who had just collapsed a mile from the finish line. Clare slowly unlatched the top lock, leaving the sturdy chain engaged, and opened the door just a crack, letting in a gust of cold, wet air. "I am so sorry to bother you," he whispered, his voice hoarse, sounding ragged with cold and relief. My car broke down on Route 12, miles back. My phone's dead. I've been walking for hours. I just need a place to stay out of the storm until sunrise. I promise, I'll be gone the moment it's light." Clare's internal alarm bells were still shrieking. "Don't do it. He's a stranger. You have a child." She studied him through the gap. She looked for anger, for menace, for the slick deception of a con man. She saw none of it. He was carrying only a small, expensive-looking leather duffel bag. But it was his eyes that truly broke through her defenses. They were deep-set, red-rimmed, and held a raw look of genuine distress and vulnerability. The look of a man who had lost his way and had nothing left to hide. He wasn't aggressive. He was utterly exposed. Clare recognized the profound, soul-deep exhaustion of someone running not to a destination, but simply away from something terrible. He radiated honesty, a broken kind of truth she recognized. He's just lost, she thought, the memory of her own desolate helplessness years ago flooding back. He is just another human soul in pain. With a shaky hand, she slid the chain lock off and pulled the door open, stepping aside. "You can come in," she murmured, the words barely audible over the rain. "But you will stay on the couch, and you will be quiet. My son is sleeping." He entered quietly, shivering so violently that the entire room seemed to vibrate. Water dripped from his coat onto the old, warped wooden floor. His name, he managed to gasp, was David Chen. He didn't offer any more details, and Claire was too emotionally drained to ask. She found him the only decent towel she owned and wrapped him tightly in the worn-out blanket. "Thank you," he repeated, his voice full of profound, barely contained emotion. "You have no idea what you've done for me tonight." That night, as the storm hammered the roof, David Chen slept on the tiny, lumpy couch, and Claire stayed awake in her room, listening. She listened to the rain, the soft breathing of her son, and the rustle of the stranger in her living room. The fear was a persistent low hum, but it was now mixed with a deep, unsettling curiosity. She was a mother first, but tonight, she had chosen to be something more, a compassionate human being. She had just opened her door to a complete unknown, and she knew, with terrifying certainty, that this single decision would change the course of her meticulously planned, desperate life. When Claire finally allowed herself to fall asleep, it was only for a couple of hours. She woke up the next morning feeling the immediate, sharp jolt of panic. The stranger. She threw on an old robe and rushed to the living room, her mind racing with worst-case scenarios. The house was quiet. Too quiet. But then she saw him. David Chen was sitting up on the couch, wrapped in the blanket. He looked dramatically better, calmer, focused, and utterly still. His soaked clothes were neatly folded in a small pile on a nearby chair, and he held a mug of water, simply observing the weak, filtered morning light that had broken through the clouds. He looked less like a castaway and more like a man deep in thought. He stood up immediately when he saw her, his demeanor formal and respectful. "Good morning, Claire," he said, his deep voice carrying a tone of sincere humility. "I sincerely apologize for the intrusion. I understand the risk you took. I promise I will never forget your kindness." Claire's tension eased a notch, but the curiosity was intense. "It's fine," she said, trying to keep her voice steady. "The storm has passed. You can stay until you figure out your arrangements. There's instant coffee, but I'm afraid that's all I have." He offered her a faint, grateful smile. "You are far too generous." Just then, her alarm clock went off, and little David shuffled out of his room, rubbing the sleep from his eyes, clutching his astronaut. He stopped dead in his tracks, looking up at the stranger. "Mommy, who is that?" he whispered, his small voice echoing in the sudden silence. "This is David, honey. He got caught in the big storm last night, and Mommy helped him," Claire explained, pulling her son close, her hand resting protectively on his shoulder. The two Davids exchanged a long look. David Chen, the guest, knelt down smoothly so he was perfectly eye level with the boy, demonstrating an instinctive, gentle familiarity. "Hi, little man. Thank you for letting me borrow your couch. Your mom is a hero." Claire was deeply affected by the genuine nature of the interaction. She started the usual morning choreography. 2 pieces of toast for herself, oatmeal and a glass of milk for her son, the frantic search for his homework folder. David Chen watched her every move. He watched the efficiency born of exhaustion, the careful rationing of butter on the toast, the sheer labor required to get a child out the door on time when one is running on fumes. Then his gaze drifted. It landed on the small, pitiful pile of overdue bills that Claire had tried to hide beneath a chipped ceramic fruit bowl on the counter. His expression shifted instantly. The curiosity vanished, replaced by a sudden, intense seriousness. It was a look of profound, almost painful comprehension. The strain on Claire's face, the worn condition of the home, the careful budgeting, it all coalesced into a complete story for him. "You're doing this all alone?" he asked quietly, his eyes glancing toward the small bedroom where little David's sparse but loved collection of toys was neatly organized. Claire nodded, her voice barely a whisper. "Yeah, just me and my boy. It's a lot." Something powerful and unreadable shifted in David Chen's expression. It wasn't pity, but a deep, sorrowful recognition. He didn't press for details, but the questions had clearly been answered. A few minutes later, as Claire was frantically searching under the sofa cushions for little David's missing shoe, David Chen slipped into the kitchen. He retrieved his phone. It must have held a tiny residual charge, and quickly dialed a number. He spoke in low, hushed tones, his voice a world away from the humbled stranger of the night before. Claire only caught fragments, but they were startling. I'm at a small house, the kindest person I've ever met. Yes, I need you to use the address I text you right now. I need you to look into her situation. Discreetly. Immediately, father. Claire was too preoccupied to pay close attention. After giving her son a hurried kiss goodbye, she rushed out to drop him off at school. When she returned, Chen was standing outside her front door. He looked focused, determined, and there was an electrifying energy about him. His phone was back in his hand, and he wore a strange, unreadable expression, a mix of satisfaction and resolution. Everything okay? She asked, pulling her keys from her purse. He gave her a slight, yet powerful smile. Yes, Claire. More than okay. And thank you again truly for everything. You have no idea how much this night and this morning meant to me. Then, before she could ask about the hurried phone call or his mysterious destination, he handed her a folded piece of paper. He didn't wait for a reply or an explanation. He simply turned and walked away, disappearing quickly down the street, melting into the morning traffic. Claire watched him go, completely bewildered. She opened the paper. It was not a message. It was completely blank except for a single, elegantly written name and phone number. Chen. She folded the paper and tucked it into her wallet, deciding it was just a strange, rich man way of saying thank you. She didn't call. She couldn't. Life went on. The days turned into weeks. The bills continued to pile higher. The diner cut her hours again. Hope, which had briefly flickered, faded once more. Then one Thursday morning, 3 weeks later, there was another far more insistent knock at the door. This time, it wasn't a desperate soul. It was a sharply dressed man in a crisp navy suit, holding a leather clipboard and a thick sealed envelope. Miss Clare Robinson? He asked in a formal professional tone. I'm here on behalf of Mr. Chen. He asked me to deliver this. Please sign here. Claire's heart instantly leaped into her throat. She knew that name. Chen. The stranger from the storm. The man who made a hushed call to father. She signed the receipt, her hand shaking violently, and took the heavy envelope. She knew, with profound certainty, that the moment she opened it, her life would never be the same. Claire rushed inside, the heavy, sealed envelope feeling impossibly dense in her hand. She placed it on the kitchen counter, taking a moment to breathe. A long, ragged inhale that tasted of fear and hope. She tore open the seal, her breath catching in her throat, and pulled out the contents. Inside was a professionally printed letter, neatly signed, and a bank check. Claire's eyes fell on the check first. It was made out to her, Clare Robinson, bold and clear. The number written on the line was so immense, so shocking, that she had to squint, then look away, then look back again, convinced her sleep deprivation was causing a hallucination. $50,000, $50,000. She felt a wave of dizziness, so strong it forced her to grab the counter for support. It had to be a cruel joke, a mistake, a scam. She forced herself to focus and read the letter, her hands trembling so violently she could barely hold the paper still. Claire. Please forgive the sudden, dramatic delivery, but I wanted to ensure this reached you safely and privately. I know this must be overwhelming, but I need you to understand why I am doing this, and what your kindness meant to me. That night, I wasn't just running from the storm. I was running from an entirely different kind of disaster. I had just walked out on my life. A life that was wealthy, privileged, and completely suffocating. I had finally found the courage to break off a horrible, arranged engagement, and reject the mandate to take over my family's massive real estate empire, Chen Global Holdings. I was running from expectations, from a lack of freedom, and from a cold, loveless existence. When my car failed miles from the nearest town, I was utterly alone, cut off from my entire support system, and I truly had nowhere to go. I was terrified. But you opened your door. You looked past the dirt, the desperation, and the fear in my eyes. You gave me a towel and a blanket. You didn't demand explanations or qualifications. You just treated me like a human being in need. When I saw those unpaid bills, when I witnessed the sheer, heroic struggle of a mother fighting to keep her child safe and happy, I realized the immense difference between my life of unearned privilege and your life of profound, earned sacrifice. You showed me that real wealth is not measured in holdings, but in generosity of spirit. The call I made that morning was indeed to my father, the CEO. I told him everything. I told him about your kindness, and the immediate debt I felt I owed to the woman who gave me hope. I convinced him to help me set up this gift, which I insist is not charity, but an investment. Consider it a thank you, Claire, and a chance to truly focus on your future and your sons, without the constant crushing anxiety of debt. That phone number I left you is my personal line. I have officially left the family business to start my own nonprofit foundation dedicated to helping struggling single parents. I call it the Open Door Fund. I sincerely hope you call me. I owe you more than money. You gave me the courage to start my own new life. With deepest gratitude and respect, David Chen. Claire sank into her kitchen chair, the letter fluttering to the floor. For the first time in years, the crushing physical weight of her financial burdens lifted, replaced by a wave of pure, shaking, disbelieving relief. Tears came freely, not tears of sadness, but of miraculous, overwhelming release. She looked around her small, tired home, the old couch, the flickering lamp, and she realized the truth. A single act of radical compassion had not only changed a stranger's life, but had completely rewritten her own. That evening, she held little David tightly and explained that things were finally going to be okay. They could fix the broken roof, pay every single bill, and perhaps, finally, she could stop waitressing and focus on a better future. Little David didn't understand the details, but he hugged her fiercely and whispered, "See, Mommy? You're a superhero and good people get good things." The next few months unfolded like a beautiful, well-deserved dream. Claire paid off all her debts, started an emergency savings account, and crucially, quit the diner job. She used a portion of the money to enroll full-time in an online accounting program, a professional dream she had abandoned years ago. She did call David Chen. They spoke often, their conversations filled with mutual respect. He had successfully launched the Open Door Fund, and Claire's story was the central inspiration for its mission. One afternoon, while she was studying at a local library, she saw a familiar, tall figure across the street, emerging from a new, sleek office building. It was David Chen. He was impeccably dressed, but the deep-set exhaustion was gone, replaced by a strong, confident focus. He was standing beside a group of people, looking over architectural plans for a new community center. When he noticed her, their eyes met. He didn't rush over, and she didn't call out. They simply exchanged a quiet, profound smile, a silent, powerful acknowledgement of the miracle that had passed between them. He gave her a small nod of genuine respect, and she returned it with a thankful nod that encompassed all the years of struggle. Sometimes, words are entirely unnecessary when gratitude and transformation run deep. Claire and David Chen became lifelong friends and collaborators. She eventually used her accounting skills to help manage the Open Door Fund, ensuring that other struggling parents received the same crucial lifeline she had. Years later, when Claire graduated with her degree in accounting, David Chen and her son, little David, were right there in the front row, cheering the loudest. Claire, now confident and financially secure, watched them and thought about that stormy night. She realized that miracles aren't necessarily grand flashes of light or angels in disguise. Sometimes, they arrive in the shape of a terrified stranger on a rainy night and a mother too kind, too brave, to turn him away. That single choice had been the most pivotal investment of her entire life. Claire, now confident and financially secure, watched them and thought about that stormy night. She realized that miracles aren't necessarily grand flashes of light or angels in disguise. Sometimes, they arrive in the shape of a terrified stranger on a rainy night and a mother too kind, too brave, to turn him away. That single choice had been the most pivotal investment of her entire life.